I don't want to say I bit off more than I should chew. Could chew. I don't feel like I bit off more than I can chew. It's just, did I put too much on my plate right now? Hello and welcome to the shop. I'm Jared and this is the Questionable Garage. And we're standing next to probably my second favorite project of all of them in the fleet. Number one, we haven't started on yet. It's the Super the wife and I drove away from our wedding in. Obviously that's number one, but number two, when it comes to muscle cars, there's always been one in my mind that was far superior to everything else. You would think, after all the work I put into a 1971 Plymouth Duster we called Try Hard, A-body Mopars would have been my favorite. And no, that was just kind of a car of opportunity. But picking it up, I saw my favorite muscle car at my friend Taylor's shop.
Hi, that's me.
A 1970 B-body Mopar. Now, there are differences between the Dodge, the Charger. Everyone knows that iconic, especially the 69 Charger. From the movie, Bright Orange TV show, went on for many years. But to me, 1970, they got the front end just a little bit different. It looked just a little bit better. And then in the back, it goes on forever. And they look amazing to me. This giant rear end, big and blocky. And for whatever reason, I had to have a 1970. The lowest production year of all of them, by far. This one here is a Plymouth Sport Satellite. Most of them ended up getting turned into Roadrunner clones. Sport Satellite Roadrunner is technically the model name, and we're not doing that. We are building this car back as a sport. It's gonna be pretty. We're putting paint on something. And I paid a bit of a premium on this shell because it had a lot of metal work done to it. But then I stopped and realized if I'm building the kind of once in a lifetime build that I'm going to keep, that we're gonna put pretty paint on, I wanted it to be really nice. Like, I wanna build it to the best that I am capable of building the car to. And I could have started with a much cheaper one, but honestly, they're hard to find. From 69 or 71, there's more than twice the production of satellites, period, than there were in 1970, and Sport Satellites were under the 8,800 made number. All the front end sheet metal, 1 year only. Thankfully, the back sheet metal, there are a little bit more of a window. We can fix them and get parts for them a little bit better, but if we're doing it, we're gonna do it right. And in the last episode on this car, we did a door skin on the passenger side. Now, we are going to try and get everything torn down to then build it back up. Well, maybe not everything. We'll see how far we get today, but let me bring you in a little bit closer and we're gonna go over all of the things I decided just weren't good enough for my dreams. This, that, all of this, that, can't forget that, this, yeah, probably that, there's that too, that poor job, yeah. That too. Well, the way it's acting, this is gonna wanna hit me in the face. We got one bolt on that side. Yep, right there. All right. That one's banged up a little bit, but that's okay. We're gonna need to recondition those bumper brackets. Doing whole quarters, just not necessarily because of the quality work. There's just some sketchy sections of the quarters, but I am doing all new floor pans in the front half because of quality work. A little bit of me almost wants to do trunk floors again. And just based on quality of what they've done. Guess we're gonna be learning how to recondition and rebuild those studs. Now, we're gonna get this off, and then I'm gonna turn on some fans and cue time lapse of us pulling the interior and getting ready. Boom. Chrome goes all the way through. Super long little skinny studs. We gotta pull front chrome, seat, interior, and we get going on it. So we are going to do something pretty cool. If the other side is any indication, we're going to get to burn and melt the original lead seam filler off this panel. Anytime you're working with lead, minimal glasses and mask. Gloves work pretty well. I kind of like the feel of my hands and I'm not grabbing hot molten metal. You have two options. You can pre-grind down your paint and expose the lead. I did it on that side, but I got a pretty good idea now where the seam is, so we're just going to go straight in with heat and start to melt it out. You start to see this shiny lead there. Now it's very traditional on old muscle cars that they use lead here, and that's because it wouldn't shrink like the body fillers of the time. Modern body fillers are a little bit better about not shrinking, so leading is becoming a dying art. And when it comes to restoring these cars, a lot of people will use a metallic or a high metal body fill, and that works fine. Some people even just straight up shove normal filler in, which really, to me, is not a good idea because you're dealing with such, as you can see, the gap. Eastwood, I think, and a couple other companies now are offering kits that are for leading, but it's not actual lead or very little lead in the material, so it's a little safer to work with. I got fans going in the background. Again, you really need to avoid breathing this stuff. It's like the asbestos. We know we have some bad body work here and there on it as far as patch panels. What this does tell me is the main structure, while rusted, it's not been in bad accidents. It's not had a quarter done a long time ago. I make the mistake, I sometimes go back and forth. You want to just kind of brush away from you to avoid accidentally throwing lead at yourself. You're slowly melting away like the Terminator. And there we go. Well, we have made really good progress and getting everything ready to start cutting. You know, we got the interior out, the seats out. One other thing, we're doing the floors. Let's see if I can show you well enough. The other side more, but there's just lots of little potholes in this section, but we are not touching the floors yet. So this is a unibody car. And if we were to cut out all the outside body panels and the floors at once, it's gonna get wiggly and jello. So the way you do it, at least in my opinion, one at a time. Otherwise, you're gonna be welding in tons of bars to cross brace and reinforce. But we know our frame rails are good front to back. We're gonna have inner structure tying a little bit into the roof while we're doing the quarter panel, so we're not gonna jello the whole chassis. It's gonna stay nice and solid. But if you took everything out of it, it's gonna be hard to get all the measurements right. So outside panels coming off. Later on, we'll be doing this. And again, it's just mostly the patch job they did was not, it's there. But when you're building your dream, you do it all the way and you do it all the way right. At least that's what I'm going for. So we're almost ready to start cutting this off. We've got to reveal exactly, I think it's just right in here. I think it's a little bit more weld. And we'll start cutting these skins off. Now, you may be wondering, what are we replacing it with? There is a lot of goodness from AMD. We've got an entire new, we did this door skin, but we're gonna do an entire door shell on the other side. And that's because there's a lot of cracking that could potentially be repaired, but when you're able to get a really good quality door shell, we're gonna do that. But we've got our quarters here, we'll get unwrapped. We've got the package tray. I ordered this just in case, because you can see how bad this rot is. There's this weird C-channel piece there that ends up here. Those are these guys here, and I went ahead and ordered it just in case it's really bad. It's kind of interesting. Apparently not a lot of people replace these because the box was covered in dust, which means it'd been on the shelf for a little while because the warehouse at AMD is really clean. So for it to have a lot of dust on it, it'd been sitting. So we'll unbox a quarter, figure out where that final line is, and then bust out the cutting tools, and there's really no going back there. But it's worth it to make this section perfect. I've got multiple friends who like to do body swaps and use 70 satellites, and while that's not good enough for me, it might be good enough for them. So we're gonna try to cut it in a way that it's potentially usable for some friends. It's a little more work, but you help each other out, especially the guys who help you. So I think, I wonder why these cars rust. That's got to be worth something. A Ronald McDonald cone? Well, you showed up and helped and did the... Actually, none of this was fun. It's just all dirty, but you fit better in the back seat than me, and you got the spot welds out.
We started with a car, and
we now have like a pickup truck thing.
Pieces.
Another ute, maybe. What is it with me? What did you think of my trick? I don't know if you've seen it before, where you just sand the edge down and then you come back later with the spot weld. Yeah, it's just, it protects what you're trying to work with. Rust-wise, what do you think about what we found underneath?
There's more than we expected, but it could have been a lot worse.
Yeah, I'm a little worried on this wheel well. I need to recheck all my parts. There's what? Ow, that's sharp. Tetanus. There's a little more in here. I think I've got everything to fix, and I may just fabricate rather than fully replace. That guy, still not very good. We're gonna fix a lot of little things. One thing we were talking about, you had the idea, is make that a solid piece. Yes, from the factory it's 2 pieces, but we've got a really cool laser welder, so
I think it'd be the perfect project.
I kind of like that idea. But I'm an old man apparently, and I'm now allergic to naproxen, and had a small allergic reaction. You ran and got me medicine, and now I'm kind of feeling sleepy.
Call it a day.
So yeah, I'm not even sweeping the floors. We'll do that later. Wife's gonna drive me home. You're gonna go enjoy some Dales, probably, right?
Probably.
Sounds good. And then we're gonna watch your friend Taylor drift.
Yep.
Top 8 again, right?
Or we could do better, right?
At least top 8. Maybe. We'll see. Dwayne will pop up his result here, and then we'll see how he did guessing. Let's update on what we've been doing and what we're still going to try to get done before we wrap up this episode. You saw I had that Bauer from our friends over at Harbor Freight surface conditioner. I was just curious to see how it would work on some of this rust and the angles, and it was doing a pretty good job knocking stuff down. We're still going to need to wire wheel a little bit, but I think with the aggressive drum, it's going to do really good in prepping these surfaces and figuring out how much more in depth we're gonna have to get. Like, that corner scares me, and it's again, how far do we go? It's the once in a lifetime build. I don't intend to ever build another B-body Mopar, especially a 70, because they're a little bit expensive. And it's everything in me to just call up Auto Metal Direct and get wheel wells. But I need to strip this down the rest of the way to find out if we need to do wheel wells, because you can patch things and do it well, and the more we keep taking off, the more the chassis can twist a little bit. I don't have a big frame table, and really at this point you don't need one. We still have the whole top and technically the bottom of the structural box still intact. And doing little cutouts and patches is not gonna affect that. So now we need to come through and get the rest of the quarter. So like this section is part of the quarter. All of the metal that we worked through down along here. And it's funny, prep your stuff, because the brand new patches has a little bit of rust forming because they didn't do it right. Also, I got the deck lid and the deck lid fillers out because I was just trying to figure out in that area if we had everything we needed. Because I could tell, let's see, we'll start on this side. Looking in here, I could tell there was one more piece that was not part of this, and I was trying to figure it out and find it, and I was getting worried, and I was looking on catalogs, and then I suddenly realized, after looking at this one that was slightly more intact, I've already got them. So the reason I've got this, let's see if it goes in like that. Obviously there's a little bit more old metal to come off and a lot of cleaning and prep before that will ever go in. But when I was making my parts list from Auto Metal Direct, I remembered when I added that, it also said, hey, you might need this. So they did a really good job of suggesting the parts you need. Also, on the sail panel that lives right here, I noticed these trunk supports ended up being totally rotten out. And I was like, dang it, I gotta order more parts. And then I remember there were 2 random rectangle boxes that I wasn't sure what was in them, and guess what? It was the right part. So turns out the manufacturer of the restoration metal, they've seen it enough that usually they're recommended you're also gonna need this list. That's a pretty good list to go by. So what we're gonna wrap up with is going through and removing the rest of all the old metal. And if you remember on the door skin, it was how we removed all this other metal, is you just sand on the seam. It gets the bulk of the metal away and leaves you with just the small flange to work with. So we'll have to come back through here, find where our spot welds are, and we're gonna do a mixture of grinding with a belt sander and a flap disc, and then we'll actually drill some. So the way I decide if I'm gonna drill through it or if I'm gonna sand it down is, do I want a hole in the metal that we are removing? So this roof skin sits on top of the quarter panel. So we can drill out these welds and grind them down because the metal behind goes away and is replaced with a solid piece. But through the wheel well and all of that panel, our quarter panel sits on top of it. So we don't necessarily want holes in the backing metal here. So that's where we're gonna come in and sand and cut from the front. We'll show you those couple different techniques, and then we'll try a little bit more rust cleanup. And I'm tired of talking, so let's get to work. Hey, guys, wake back up. I get it. Grinding out spot welds and careful, body work, pulling panels off, it's not the most exciting. Also, there's about 11,000 throughout the whole thing, and I knocked out almost all of it. I've run out of batteries. My belt sander, the upper bearing failed, and I'm out of belts, so yeah, we're at a good stopping point. That, and I'm a smidge discouraged. Let's go over the car, and I'll kind of go over the slight discouragement. So what you saw We're working all of the rest of that outer quarter panel off, carefully removing and leaving this bracket. The bracket that lived in there, we have new ones, so we got that gone. We cut and lifted our roof section here and got all of it out, bent the drip rail down enough so the new quarter could slide in. This whole section we'll need to kind of fabricate and recreate. As you can see on that side, it does end here, but this flat section should come up a little bit higher. So not a super complex piece, but a little tricky. Come in here, we've got the rest of those pockets removed, ready for the new ones to go in. But where we start running into some discouragement, and it just compounds, this wheel well. We're missing a lot in here. The actual rocker itself's pretty good, aside from where it was lifted on with a floor jack. I can pull that out, we can fix it, it's not rust. Bodywork, which I don't like. Makes perfect sense that I'm doing an entire project that is just bodywork. That I don't like bodywork, of course. So the bodywork side, rust. It's just, that box is gone. Doing a wheel tub, as you can tell, we gotta remove this, we gotta remove this. Ties into the inner. There's just a whole lot of it. So do we buy a wheel tub and just patch in the sections that are gone? Do we put a whole one in? I feel pretty comfortable with a patch. I don't know. Then we're gonna start coming along back here. One, almost none of the rocker was actually, or the quarter was actually welded to that. There was a lot of weld, just nothing connecting anything. We came back here to the rear panel, and the way they did this floor patch, just, I get it. Doing it right is very difficult when the car is together. And this is something I should have looked closer at. But car buying tip, don't just buy off emotion. I saw the car, I was excited, and I should have done due diligence and looked it over. Taylor didn't really want to sell it. He gave me a fair price for what I just looked on the surface at. He didn't miss this, like, to be clear, I don't hold any ill will against Taylor. He, again, wasn't really trying to sell the car, gave me a fair price for it, didn't represent anything other than there's the car, look at it, and I didn't closely. I just saw, hey, there's floor patches, hey, there's trunk patches. I didn't look to see how good they were done. And good they done, they weren't. So, I don't know, do I redo the trunk floor? I can do the best job of it now. I'll just have to be very careful. Maybe build some stringers at this point, because once I remove that floor, we'll pick up some flex. But, you know, coming along here, for whatever reason, they left this little bit of factory floor, tried to blend into it, missed a bunch of welds, but then again, coming into this wheel well, getting stuck again. Air hose, everything's in the way. We're just missing a good bit throughout this thing. And it's, what do I go into? How deep do I go? And then I knew I had to do some roof patch there. I discovered this roof rust here. Easy to patch. It's not that big a deal, but I'm in it so deep. Do I pick up a set of drip rails and a new roof skin? So if I take the roof off, I don't have to make those little patches, which I really don't mind to make. But what happens when I pull the roof and I find something else? Like I said, you build the dream car once, and I don't want to say I bit off more than I could chew. I don't feel like I bit off more than I can chew. It's just, did I put too much on my plate right now? But I can't stop. We can't go backwards. The car's cut apart. It's just, when do I stop cutting and do we start assembling? Because I kind of hoped we were going to fit some stuff this episode, and or not. We just found a few discouragement things. But I'm going to keep smiling the way through, because no matter how much work it takes, when I'm done, I'm going to have my Plymouth Sport Satellite 1970. I'm going to have it. It's going to be a beautiful white car with pretty paint. That's the finish line. It's just, sometimes when you're in it, you're in it, and it's rough. And it's okay to get a little discouraged, but you know, picture the finish line and the next little step that's going to get you a little bit closer to it. My next little step is looking up part numbers, figuring out budget, picking up a new belt sander, and some more sanding stuff. And then figure out where my rust emulsifier is. Otherwise, I'm not going to have any car left if I just keep cutting rust out. At some point, it's good enough. I don't know where that point is yet. What do you think I'm going to do? I'm Jared, reminding you guys to always make questionable choices and don't make emotional car purchases. Take a second, look it over. That way you make an educated car purchase. Questionable car purchases are okay, but be educated. We'll see ya.